Welcome. You made it back to the second part of this amazing story. If you missed the part 1, the link is in the description of this video. Go watch it now. Let's begin. Amber drove back to the mansion, her mind spinning. She found Ho-Joon in the garden, pulling weeds with methodical intensity. He looked up when she approached, his face carefully neutral. "How is it?" he asked. "Good. Really good. They offered me the job." "That's great, Amber. Congratulations. They need an answer by Friday. You should say yes." "Should I?" He stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "Of course. It's a good opportunity. That's not what I'm asking, and you know it." His jaw clenched. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to tell me the truth. I want you to tell me if you want me to stay or if I've been wasting my time here." "You haven't been wasting your time. Then why won't you fight for this? Why won't you fight for us?" "Because there is no us." The words exploded out of him, raw and desperate. "There can't be. I can't give you what you need. I can't be what you need. And I care about you too much to watch you slowly realize that and leave anyway. So you're leaving me first. I'm protecting you. I don't need protection. I need honesty." "Fine. Honest? I'm falling in love with you and it's terrifying because I know how this ends. You take the job, you move here, we try to make it work. And for a while, it's good. Maybe even great. But eventually, you'll want more. You'll want physical intimacy, a normal relationship, someone who doesn't come with a medical textbook of complications. And I won't be able to give you that. And you'll start to resent me. And I'll see it happening and I won't be able to stop it. And one day, you'll look at me with pity or frustration or disgust, and it will destroy me. So I'd rather end it now, while it's still good, while you can still remember me as someone you cared about instead of someone you grew to regret." Amber felt like she'd been struck. "You really think that little of me? This isn't about you." "Yes, it is. You're making decisions for me based on what you think I can't handle. You're deciding my feelings before I've even had them. You're so convinced you're unlovable that you won't even let me try to love you. Because trying hurts worse than never starting. And never starting means never living." They stood there, both breathing hard, the space between them charged with everything they weren't saying. Everything they were too afraid to say. Ho-Joon's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I've been alone for 8 years, Amber. 8 years of silence and safety and slowly disappearing. Then you showed up in a storm, and you didn't run and you didn't pity me, and you made me remember what it felt like to be human. To want things. To hope. And now I'm more terrified than I've ever been because I know what it's like to have something and lose it. I can't survive losing you. Then don't lose me. Let me stay. For how long? A month? A year? Until you realize this is too hard. Maybe forever. Maybe I realize this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. You can't promise that. No one can promise that. That's what makes it brave." He shook his head, and she saw tears on his face now, tracking down his cheeks in the afternoon sun. "I want to believe you. God, I want to believe you so badly it hurts. But I've been hurt so many times and I'm so tired of hurting." Amber stepped closer, close enough to touch him, but she didn't. "Not yet. I know. And I can't promise I won't hurt you. I'm human. I'll make mistakes. I'll say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. But I can promise I won't run because of your condition. I can promise I'll stay through the hard parts. I can promise that when I look at you, I don't see a problem or a diagnosis. I see a brilliant, complicated, beautiful person who deserves to be loved exactly as he is." You make it sound so simple. It is simple. The fear makes it complicated. Ho-Joon reached out, his hand hovering near her face, not quite touching. "What if I can't be what you need? What if you're exactly what I need and you just don't see it yet?" His hand finally made contact, his fingers brushing her cheek, so gently it felt like a question. "I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. But maybe we figure it out together." He pulled her close then, wrapping his arms around her, and she felt him shaking. Or maybe she was shaking. Maybe they both were. She pressed her face against his chest and heard his heart hammering and thought about how much courage it takes to let someone in when the world has taught you that people leave. "I'm scared," he whispered into her hair. "Me too. Stay anyway?" "I'm not going anywhere." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the garden while the sun moved across the sky. When they finally pulled apart, Ho-Joon's face was different. Not exactly happy, but open. Vulnerable. Real. Wait, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, so you get notified for the next amazing stories. Like and comment. The most liked comment will get a shout out in the next story. Let's continue. I should tell you, he said carefully, that if we try this, it's going to be complicated. My condition, it means we'll need to take things very slowly. Physical intimacy might never be traditional. There will be pain management, medical appointments, difficult conversations. I need you to know what you're signing up for. Okay, tell me. So he did. They went inside, sat in the library, and he explained everything. The chronic pain that flared unpredictably. The treatments he'd tried that hadn't worked. The modifications and accommodations that might make intimacy possible but would require patience and communication and time. He showed her more medical records, more therapy notes, more of the reality he'd been living with for years. And she listened. Really listened. Asked questions. Held his hand when the explanations got hard. And never once did she look at him with pity or disgust or fear. Is that everything? She asked when he finished. That's the major parts. The rest we'd figure out as we go. Okay. I'm still here, aren't I? He laughed, and this time it sounded less like disbelief and more like relief. You're either very brave or very foolish. Why not both? Fair point. That night, Amber called Dr. Chin and accepted the position. She'd start in 4 weeks, which gave her time to find an apartment, move her things, start building a life in Cypress Bay. When she told Ho-Joon, he looked at her with such pure joy that she wanted to take a picture and frame it. Are you sure? He asked. I'm sure. I want this job. I want this town. I want you. In that order? All together. Package deal. He smiled, really smiled, and she realized she'd never seen him smile like that before. Can I show you something? He led her to a room she hadn't been in before on the 3rd floor. When he opened the door, she gasped. It was a music therapy room. Equipment, instruments, comfortable furniture, everything someone would need to run sessions. Dusty from disuse, but clearly set up with intention. I built this 5 years ago, Ho-Joon explained. I thought maybe I could use music to help others even if I couldn't perform anymore. But I never followed through. I was too scared to let people into the house. It's perfect. I want you to use it. If you want. For your new program, or for private clients, or just for yourself. Whatever you need. Amber turned to him, overwhelmed. You're letting me use your house? I'm asking you to make it our house. The words hung between them, massive and terrifying and wonderful. Ho-Joon, are you asking me to move in with you? He took a breath. Yes, if you want. No pressure, we can take it slow. You can keep your apartment and just use this space during the day, whatever you're comfortable with. But I've been alone in this house for 8 years, and I think it's time it became a home again. And I think you're the person who could make that happen. Amber's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I'll move in. Yes, I'll use this space. Yes, I want to make this house a home. Yes to all of it. He kissed her then. Carefully, tentatively, like he was afraid she might disappear if he moved too fast. It was gentle and sweet and tasted like tears and hope and new beginnings. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. This is really happening, he said. This is really happening. Over the next 4 weeks, they built something neither of them had thought possible. Amber moved her things into Willowry's estate, claiming a room for herself, but spending most nights talking with Ho-Joon until dawn. They established boundaries and communication patterns. They talked about intimacy honestly, without shame, figuring out what might work and what wouldn't. They were careful with each other, patient, learning. Ho-Joon started playing publicly again, just small things at first. He'd play at the community center where Amber was setting up her program. Local residents would stop and listen, drawn by the music pouring from the windows. Some recognized him from his concert days. Word spread. The reclusive pianist was emerging from his mansion. Amber started her program, working with trauma survivors who'd lost their voices, literally or metaphorically. She used the room Ho-Joon had built, and slowly, The house began to fill with other people's music too. Children learning instruments. Adults rediscovering melodies they'd forgotten. The mansion transformed from a mausoleum into something alive. They were happy. Genuinely, surprisingly happy. But happiness doesn't mean easy. 3 months into Amber living at Willow Rise, she came home from work to find Ho-Joon in bed, curled in pain, his face gray. A bad flare-up, the worst he'd had in months. She helped him to the bathroom, called his doctor, managed his medication. He was embarrassed, ashamed, kept apologizing. "This is what you signed up for," he said through gritted teeth. "I know. It's not going to get better. I know that too. Amber, you can still leave. You should leave." She sat on the edge of the bed, took his hand. "I'm not leaving. This is life. This is what people do. They show up for each other when things are hard. This will happen again. Then I'll be here again." He looked at her with such raw vulnerability. "Why aren't you running?" "Because I love you, you idiot. And love means staying. You love me. Of course I love you. Did you think I moved into a haunted mansion with a grumpy pianist for fun?" He laughed, even though it clearly hurt. "I love you too. I've been too scared to say it." "Well, now you have." And the world didn't end. Not yet anyway. "Ho-Joon." "Yeah? Stop waiting for me to leave. I'm not going anywhere." The flare-up lasted 3 days. 3 days of Amber managing medications, rescheduling clients, bringing food to bed, sitting with Ho-Joon through the worst of it. 3 days of him being vulnerable in ways that terrified him. 3 days of her proving that she meant what she said about staying. When it passed, they were different. Closer. More solid. Like they'd weathered a storm and found themselves still standing. "Thank you," he said on the 4th morning when he could finally get out of bed without agony. "For what?" "For not making me feel like a burden." "You're not a burden. You're the person I love. There's a difference." He pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "I don't know what I did to deserve you. You opened your door in a storm. Everything else followed." As months turned into a year, life found a rhythm. Amber's program flourished. She worked with dozens of clients, seeing the same transformations her grandmother had described. Music opening doors that talk therapy couldn't. Songs building bridges across trauma. Ho-Joon started composing again, really composing. He wrote pieces inspired by Amber, by the clients at the center, by the sound of the house coming alive. He submitted one to a competition, anonymously, and won. When they asked him to perform it at a gala, he almost said no. But Amber convinced him. "You're ready," she said. "What if I'm not?" "Then you'll be not ready in front of people. But I think you'll be magnificent." The night of the performance, Amber sat in the front row, watching the man she loved walk onto a stage for the first time in 9 years. He looked terrified. His hands shook as he sat at the piano. But when he started playing, all of that fell away. He was brilliant, transcendent, every note carrying the weight of everything he'd survived. The audience gave him a standing ovation. Amber cried through all of it. Afterward, people swarmed him. Music directors, old colleagues, journalists. Everyone wanted to know where he'd been, what he'd been doing, why he'd disappeared. He handled it gracefully, deflecting most questions, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. The old fears creeping back. She rescued him, pulled him away, drove him home in silence. When they got to Willow Rise, he went straight to the cliffs. She followed, knowing he needed space, but not wanting him to be alone. "That was too much," he said, staring at the ocean. "I know. They want me back. Full concerts. Tours. The whole thing. What do you want?" "I don't know. A year ago, I would have said no immediately. But now, I don't know. You don't have to decide tonight. They'll want an answer soon." Amber stepped beside him. "Can I tell you what I think?" "Always. I think you're scared that if you go back to that world, you'll lose this one. But Ho-Joon, you're not that person anymore. You're not the kid who let the industry define him. You're someone who's built a life, who knows what matters, who's learned how to be alone and how to let people in. If you want to perform, perform. If you don't. But make the choice based on what you want, not what you're afraid of." He was quiet for a long time. "Then, what if I do it and I fail?" "Then you fail. And you come home and we figure out what's next." You make it sound so simple. That's because it is. The fear makes it complicated. He turned to her, smiled. You said that to me once before. It was true then. It's true now. He took her hand, threaded their fingers together. If I do this, I want you with me. Ho-Joon, I can't leave my program. I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking if we can figure out a way for me to do select performances, regional stuff mostly, close enough that I can come home between shows. I'm asking if you'll come to some of them. Be in the audience. Remind me why I'm doing this. Of course I will. And I'm asking if, maybe, someday, when we're ready, we could build something together. A foundation maybe. Music therapy and performance combined. Use the house as a center. Make it official. Amber's heart expanded. You've been thinking about this. For months. I want to use what happened to me to help others. I want to turn this house from a hiding place into a healing place. And I want to do it with you. Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes. He kissed her then under the stars on the cliffs where he'd once stood alone contemplating giving up. And she thought about storms and broken cars and doors opening in the dark. About how the worst moments can lead to the best ones if you're brave enough to walk through them. They started planning. Ho-Joon accepted a limited performance schedule, 10 shows over 6 months, all within driving distance. Amber expanded her program, hired additional therapists, created a curriculum. Together, they drafted proposals for the Willow-Rise Foundation, a nonprofit combining music therapy and performance training for people with trauma, disability, or marginalized backgrounds. It was exciting and terrifying and exhausting. But they did it together. 18 months after Amber's car broke down in that storm, the Willow-Rise Foundation officially opened. The mansion that had been a prison became a sanctuary. They converted rooms into therapy spaces, practice rooms, a small performance hall. They hired staff. They welcomed clients. Among their first students was a 12-year-old boy named Milo who'd stopped speaking after his parents' violent divorce. He'd been through 3 therapists, none of whom could reach him. His social worker brought him to Willow-Rise as a last resort. Amber worked with him 3 times a week. Piano mostly, just letting him press keys and make sounds. No pressure to speak, just space to exist. Ho-Joon would sometimes join the sessions, playing duets with Milo that didn't require words. After 6 weeks, Milo played his first complete melody. After 3 months, he smiled. After 6 months, he spoke his first words in over a year. That was beautiful, he said to Ho-Joon after a session. Ho-Joon cried. Amber cried. Milo looked confused but pleased. They kept working. Milo kept improving. His caseworker called it miraculous. Amber called it music doing what music does best, reaching places words can't touch. 2 years in, life was full. Busy and complicated and sometimes overwhelming, but full. The foundation was thriving. Amber's original program had expanded to 3 locations. Ho-Joon was performing regularly, building a new kind of career on his own terms. They'd found ways to navigate intimacy that worked for them, that honored Ho-Joon's body and its limitations while still fostering connection and joy. They'd learned to fight productively, to communicate clearly, to give each other space when needed and show up when it mattered. They'd survived more medical flare-ups, more moments of doubt, more times when the world felt too heavy. But they'd also learned to celebrate small victories. Morning coffee together. Successfully helping a client. Nights on the cliffs watching stars. All the tiny moments that add up to a life. On a Wednesday in June, 2 years and 3 months after they met, Ho-Joon asked Amber to marry him. He did it simply, no grand gesture. They were in the garden, pulling weeds together, and he just said, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Amber looked up from the tomatoes she was staking. Are you proposing right now? Yes. In the garden? I thought about doing something elaborate, but this felt more honest. This is us. This is our life. Working together, building something, dirt under our fingernails. I love you and I want to marry you. What do you say? She launched herself at him, nearly knocking them both over. Yes. Obviously yes. They got married 3 months later in the conservatory at Willow-Rise. Small ceremony, just close friends and some of their clients. Milo, who'd come so far in his healing, played piano during the processional. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Ho-Joon cried through his vows. Amber cried through hers. They promised each other honesty, patience, and courage. They promised to show up, even when it was hard. They promised to keep building a life that honored both their dreams and their limitations. "I promise to play for you when words aren't enough," Ho-Joon said. "I promise to listen, even when the music is silent," Amber replied. They kissed and everyone cheered, and for one perfect moment, everything was exactly as it should be. But life doesn't stop being complicated just because you get married. 6 months after the wedding, Amber got pregnant. It was unplanned, but not unwanted. They were both terrified and thrilled in equal measure. Ho-Joon worried constantly about being a father, about passing his condition to a child, about not being enough. Amber worried about managing pregnancy while running the foundation, about being a mother when she was still learning how to be a wife. They went to therapy, both individual and couples. They talked through every fear, every concern, every what if. And they decided to do it anyway. To be scared together and parent together and figure it out as they went. Their daughter, Willow Grace, was born on a spring morning, healthy and loud and perfect. Ho-Joon held her with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face, whispering promises in Korean and English about the life he'd give her. "I'll teach you music," he said. "I'll teach you courage. I'll teach you that being different isn't the same as being broken." Amber watched her husband become a father and felt her heart crack open in the best possible way. Parenthood was chaos. Beautiful, exhausting chaos. Ho-Joon was a natural with Willow, patient and gentle and endlessly creative. He'd compose lullabies for her, play piano while she napped nearby, introduce her to instruments before she could even sit up on her own. Amber juggled motherhood and the foundation, sometimes bringing Willow to work, sometimes leaving her with Ho-Joon, always feeling like she was dropping one ball to keep another in the air. But they made it work. They asked for help when they needed it. They gave each other grace when things fell apart. They kept showing up. As Willow grew, the foundation grew too. They served over 200 clients a year now. They'd published research on their methods. Other organizations were replicating their model. The work Amber's grandmother had believed in, the healing power of music, was spreading. Ho-Joon was performing internationally again, carefully scheduled tours that never kept him away from home for more than a week. He'd released 2 albums of original compositions, both dedicated to Amber. Critics called it his most mature work, music that had lived and suffered and found joy again. On a summer evening, when Willow was 3, Amber found Ho-Joon on the cliffs. The same place he'd stood alone so many years ago, contemplating an easier kind of ending. But now he wasn't alone. He held their daughter on his hip, pointing out stars, making up stories about constellations. Amber joined them, wrapping her arms around her family. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How different everything is. How different I am. Better different? Impossibly better. 5 years ago, I was dying slowly in this house. Now look at us. A family. A foundation. A life. You did that. We did that. Together." He kissed her, carefully adjusting Willow, who was starting to doze against his shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying. For not running. For believing I was worth the work. Ho-Joon, you were never work. You were always worth it." They stood there, the 3 of them, looking at stars over the ocean. The house behind them was full of light and life and people learning to heal through music. The mansion that had been a cage was now a home. Amber thought about the storm that brought her here. About the broken car and the open door and the sad music that drew her in. About every choice she'd made to stay when running would have been easier. About the man who'd taught himself to be alone because it felt safer than hoping. She thought about her grandmother, who'd believed music could heal anything. Who'd been right? "Tell me the truth," Ho-Joon said quietly. "Do you ever regret it? Staying? Taking on all of this?" Amber looked at him, at the life they'd built, at their daughter sleeping in his arms. "Not even for a second. You're the best choice I ever made. Even with all the complications? Especially with the complications. They made us who we are." He smiled, that real, unguarded smile she'd worked so hard to coax out of him. I love you, Amber Clark Lee. I love you too, Lee Ho-Joon. Willow stirred, mumbled something about pianos in her sleep. They laughed quietly and carried her inside, back to the house full of music and light. Behind them, the ocean kept singing to the cliffs. The same song it had sung when Ho-Joon stood here alone. But now someone was listening with him. Now he wasn't alone. The storm that brought them together had passed years ago, but its gift remained. Two people who'd both been lost, finding each other in the dark. Two people who'd both been broken, learning that broken doesn't mean unfixable. Two people who chose, every single day, to show up for each other even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Because that's what love is. Not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of someone who stays anyway. Not perfect harmony, but two people willing to compose something new together, note by note, day by day, choice by choice. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the song you create is more beautiful than anything you could have written alone. Now here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Have you ever stayed when running felt easier? Have you ever chosen someone or something even when the world told you it was too hard? Share your story below, I want to hear it. And if this story moved you, if you believe in second chances and healing and the courage it takes to let someone in, hit that like button and subscribe. We tell stories like this every week, stories about Afro-Korean love, about breaking barriers, about people who refuse to give up on each other. Drop a comment, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll see you in the next one. Love isn't easy, but it's always, always worth it. Thanks for watching.